Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and privilege to address you today at the first edition of the Climate Finance Forum organized by the International Climate Finance Accelerator. It is a great pleasure to see the success of the IFCA and the momentum generated by this Luxembourgish public-private partnership. Since its launch in 2018, 28 fund managers from all over the world have been accelerated over 6 cohorts. They have so far raised $973 million of committed capital, and the target fund size is up to a total of $2.6 billion. So the supported fund managers are really starting to mobilize a lot of money into climate finance, and we are very happy about these positive developments. As a result of recent geopolitical and macroeconomic developments, we have a lot of different crises to tackle at the same time. Mobilizing public and private capital is more important than ever. Especially in Europe, energy security issues have highlighted the need for self-sufficiency and the need to diversify our energy sources. This has accelerated further investments and research into renewables, an acceleration that is needed since the global CO2 emissions have bounced back and even exceeded pre-pandemic levels. Due to increased volatility and uncertainty together with rising interest rates, markets have faced significant turmoil. Yet, despite difficult market conditions, ESG funds have still demonstrated a strong performance, with Article 9 funds in particular seeing net positive inflows in 2022, where the rest of the fund industry saw outflows. Luxembourg domiciled ESG funds, for instance, registered 2.2 trillion euros in total assets at the end of June 2022. Europe continues to capture the majority of global ESG activity across all areas. More than 1/3 of all corporate bonds issued in Europe in 2022 were ESG labeled, and European sustainable investment funds account for more than 70% of the global ESG investment fund value. This demonstrates that investors are increasingly moving towards sustainable investments, highlighting the significant progress made in integrating sustainable finance into the mainstream. While this points in the right direction for our net zero transition, we still have a long way to go. It is true that together and in ascending order, the EU, the US, and China account for around half of global CO2 emissions. This means that the rest of the world makes up the other half, indicating that every country counts, no matter how small. The world's largest economic blocs clearly have a responsibility to lead by example, but also to support less wealthy nations in their efforts to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. In order to mobilize the trillions that are needed, sustainable finance remains one of the most essential tools. We are seeing a growing interest in sustainable finance in emerging economies, where governments are keen to attract investments in renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and other areas. In order to attract international investments for the greening of emerging markets, as well as developing countries, a certain degree of de-risking remains key. Current global spending on climate finance is estimated at around $630 billion. Africa alone needs nearly $3 trillion by 2030 to meet its nationally determined contributions. What this tells me is that we are not scaling up anywhere near fast enough. For the transition to net zero and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, public investments alone will not be sufficient. In Luxembourg, we have developed a long-standing expertise in using blended finance to mobilize private sector investments, particularly for underfunded sectors, which are a priority for us. Luxembourg is now taking an innovative next step. We have just launched a fund of funds with private sector partners, Schroders and Blue Orchard, to invest in climate mitigation and adaptation, but also the sustainable use of water, as well as biodiversity and ecosystems in emerging markets. Leveraging our best-in-class fund ecosystem, Luxembourg invested $25 million in the junior tranche of this new blended finance vehicle called the Green Earth Impact Fund. The Ministry of Finance strongly encourages collaboration between governments, financial institutions, and private sector actors to create scalable solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenges of promoting sustainable investment remain significant. One of the key challenges of promoting climate finance is the lack of clarity and consistency around climate data and sustainability and reporting. Producing reliable climate data is crucial to effectively drive climate action, identifying trends, and measuring progress. The lack of standardized and comparable sustainability data makes it difficult for investors to assess the sustainability performance of companies and assets, which can lead to misallocations and underestimation of risks. In addition, it limits the ability of policymakers and regulators to monitor and steer the financial sector towards sustainability. It hinders the accurate assessment of sustainability risks of financial institutions and the design of effective policy frameworks. At the Ministry of Finance, we are dedicated to facilitating the financial sector's shift towards greater sustainability. The Luxembourg Sustainable Finance Initiative, established collaboratively with the sector and civil society, has a primary objective of assisting the financial sector in its sustainability endeavors. This includes raising awareness, facilitating the establishment of targets, and monitoring progress. Luxembourg has been at the forefront of driving transparency and promoting disclosure in sustainable investments through its pioneering initiatives like Lux Flags, whose staple of labels continues to grow, as well as the Luxembourg Green Exchange, which has made voluntary reporting standards, as well as post-issuance reporting on proceeds, a mandatory requirement for issuers wishing to be displayed on the world's leading listing venue for sustainable securities. The multitude of frameworks and standards that financial institutions can use to assess the environmental impact of their investments can make it difficult for investors to compare different investments and make informed decisions. The European Union is working on addressing these challenges by setting up regulatory standards and frameworks such as the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation or the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the EU Sustainable Finance Taxonomy. Increased transparency is particularly important in areas such as climate adaptation, biodiversity, and ecosystems, as well as water. These three sectors are indispensable for achieving the climate targets set out in the Paris Agreement, yet lack clear data collection methods. The world's forests, soils, lands, and oceans are rich in biodiversity and make up the foundation of healthy ecosystems and sustainable development. The loss of biodiversity is both an ecological and economic emergency. The development of nature-based solutions that advocate for the preservation and restoration of biodiversity are a crucial component of our efforts to combat climate change. To reach our net zero targets and protect the Earth's biodiversity, we need to move from reacting to preparing for climate change. Reducing the GHG emissions go hand in hand with adapting and preparing for the effects of climate change. Building climate-resilient infrastructure and enabling societies, ecosystems, and economies to cope with the impacts of climate change are fundamental for the transition. Luxembourg is looking to support innovation in this context as well as to increase investment flows, as we have done in blended finance. Another facet of sustainable finance that I am very happy to see well represented at today's forum is gender finance. Gender finance and gender lens investing is both possible and profitable and must become an integral part of our sustainable finance arsenal. Yet, in 2019, the percentage of total investment in all female businesses was only 3%, and that number dropped further to 2% and remained at 2% in 2021. This shows the need for the integration of gender considerations into financial and investment decisions. Studies show that female-led companies have a better carbon footprint, indicating that gender diversity is not only the right thing to do, but also the smart thing to do. Moving forward, the S in ESG will hold a progressively significant position in the financial sector. Social bonds have experienced substantial growth in recent years, further accelerated by the impact of the pandemic. Luxembourg has demonstrated its leadership role by introducing the first sovereign sustainability bond framework in the EU, effectively integrating both green and social dimensions. The Ministry of Finance's recent partnership with 2X Global, one of the global leaders for gender-focused investments, shows our commitment to promote gender finance initiatives worldwide. These efforts are further demonstrated by the launch of the Luxembourg Women in Finance Charter. This initiative has already garnered support from 70 participants within the financial sector, affirming our dedication to fostering a more inclusive financial center and promoting representation of women at all levels. The integration of the social impact, notably gender equality and the respect of human rights, is rightfully becoming an integral part of companies' non-financial reporting. We are living in a critical moment for humanity and nature. The climate crisis, biodiversity loss, land degradation, poverty, and inequality are threatening our future. And there are plenty of other crises I don't need to mention. But they also offer us an opportunity to rethink our relationship with nature, an opportunity to transform our economies, to make them greener, more sustainable, and fairer. As Minister of Finance, I am ready to support the industry on this important journey and act wherever I can to help accelerate this just transition. I wish you a very stimulating day exploring the cutting edge of sustainable finance and how to address the challenge of moving from commitment to implementation. Thank you for your attention.
So that was a nice expose of all the things that Luxembourg is busy on, but we just wanted to note that's only a few of the long-running initiatives that actually Luxembourg has put out there. And it continues to be a pioneer in starting these type of initiatives and really funding them as well together with other parties.
Apply now.